Okay, in this video, we are talking about the currency reset, the implications for that. I'm sure you've heard the term, but that's one very small agenda of what's going on. We're going to be discussing the entire macroeconomic system today and what this means for you, your future, and your money. I'm joined by my new good friend, Steve Penny, aka the Silver Chartist. So I want to encourage everybody to make sure you hit the like button on this side right over there, this side right over there. It'll send this out to more people. The goal of this channel is to just try to wake up as many people as we can so we can participate in this wealth transfer and we're prepared for this devaluation of currencies that's taking place on a global scale. I do want to thank our channel sponsor, which is Vizsla Resources, one of my favorite silver and gold stocks. I know Steve's also an owner of this stock as well, and one of my all-around favorite CEOs and good guy, Mike. So thank you, Vizsla Resources. I do now have to say one extra thing. If you see on the comments that there is profiles that look like me and they're asking you to join WhatsApp to communicate with Mr. Bob or all these weird names, and they look like these weird spam things. There's all these periods between their numbers. This is happening to thousands of large YouTube channels. I've made an emergency video on this. Every time I delete them, it's so sophisticated that they come back like 20, 30 minutes later. So I will never ask you to join me on WhatsApp to do a trading Bitcoin thing with Mr. Bob or Mr. Phil or Mr. Jill or whatever. So I just want to let you know that. Please hit the spam button and report that. Last but not least, Steve's free silver report right there down below. The best in the business. It's free. It's right there down below. It is Silver Chartist. I'm sorry for the long intro, but now I have to say that because people seem to be joining this WhatsApp thing. So thanks, Steve.
You bet. Thanks for inviting me on again, Jake. It's always great to come speak with you and get to connect with your audience.
Okay, absolutely awesome to have you. And just a reminder for everyone, go to the link in the description or the comments, get Steve's free newsletter. I think it's one of the best ways to know what's going on with this whole currency reset and be prepared. So Steve, big word, a lot of implications to that word, and there's a lot of different storylines in a lot of different ways. But what is this whole idea of this currency reset in this kind of macroeconomic climate we're in? What does it mean to you?
Well, it's something that a lot of people in our community have always known this was coming. It's just now they've come out and put a label on it, so we know what to call it now. They're open and transparent about it now, which is really the new development. But many in the community, gold and silver investors, know that fiat currencies always return to their intrinsic value, right, which is zero. But the exception to that is if that process is interrupted. And I've never expected them to just let these currencies go to zero. So we've expected them to introduce a new system at some point, and it appears that that time is getting closer. And now they've put a title on it. And I think the World Economic Forum meeting there, it just started today. It's a 5-day event, and they titled it The Great Reset. So, it's right out there. It's not even conspiracy theory or anything on the fringe anymore. It's right out in the open.
This is the headlines for the first words at their Davos meeting, the World Economics Forum that started today. Klaus Schwab comes in with this like really weird like vampire like suit on. He says, "Hello, welcome to the Great Reset." Ha ha ha. So, what do you think the signs of this are? When you look at the larger, you study macroeconomics. So what are the signs that we're headed towards a shift in a monetary system?
Well, you don't have to look very far. I think it's becoming more and more obvious to just everyday people. I mean, when the government is just printing money and sending $2,000 checks to everyone on a regular basis now. I mean, I think people are realizing this isn't normal. I mean, if this actually worked, why weren't we doing this beforehand? If you could just print money and give it to people. Obviously, we know we can't print our way to prosperity. So that's just one obvious sign right there. I mean, if you were to tell the average person 6-7 months ago, or even a year ago, we're going to have lockdowns and supposedly the freest country in the world, you can't leave your house, businesses are mandated to close. I mean, the pace of change is just accelerating. And that's typical of when exponential change happens. The vast majority of the change happens in the last part of the time. And people are waking up to that. We're seeing it, and obviously it's going to accelerate. I don't think these trends are going to decelerate at all. And everyday investors, families, regular people, we need to be ahead of this. There's steps we can take to prepare ourselves to prosper in this environment.
So, what do you think are the biggest signs that where you said that you believe, you said that Voltaire quote about how fiat currencies always return to their intrinsic value zero, but you said that you believe that they would implement a new system before it got to that level of chaos. What do you think are the signs in the macroeconomic environment that we're headed to that? I mean, is it the US dollar index going down? Is it debt to GDP getting out of control? Is it consumer inflation in a very significant way where you're noticeably seeing the price of your ketchup increasing? I mean, what do you think it is?
So there's so many things you can look at, but there's two specific things that I've been watching for years that could end the dollar's reign as the world reserve currency. Number one is interest rates, and number two is would be an end to the petrodollar system, whereby OPEC sells its oil in US dollars. So, people ask me, how long can this system go on? And those are the two variables to look at, because at some point, the interest on the debt will consume all of the tax revenues, all of the federal tax receipts. That point is coming. So the variable in that equation is interest rates. And that's why the Fed and the powers that be, if you will, don't want interest rates to rise, because that would end the game. That would bring an end to our standard of living here in the West anyway, at a much, much faster than many people think.
So what do you anticipate them doing? I mean, obviously, they sound dumb on television, but they know what's going on. How they all portray that this can just go on. I don't really believe that they think that. What do you anticipate them doing here? Do you anticipate, you talked about how they need to keep interest rates low for all this debt that we owe. Do you think that they're going to do yield control? Do you think that they are going to bring rates below zero? Or do you think that just really would cause a total chaos if they did an exit from the dollar? What do you kind of anticipate from a monetary policy over the next, say, 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I think yield curve control is very likely the next big thing that they do, the next policy agenda. So I expect that to happen probably pretty soon. That would be my best guess. And again, it comes into interest. They cannot allow interest rates to rise.
Can you explain to a dumb person like me what exactly yield control is and why they need to do it?
Sure. In a nutshell, the Federal Reserve is the lender, right? And the Treasury is the borrower. Okay. So the government spends it and the Fed lends it to them. And these are Treasury auctions. So at an auction, there's typically, there's obviously supply and demand. So if they're offering Treasury bills or they're offering debt at a really low interest rate, no one's going to want it, right? So to entice people to buy that debt, the interest rates would have to rise to entice people to lend money. So the free market forces would cause much higher interest rates, would demand much higher interest rates right now. But instead, you have the Federal Reserve showing up at these auctions, at these Treasury auctions, with an unlimited printing press, and they can bid the rates down. So that's in a nutshell the mechanics of how it works. Now, in between that process is, of course, the big banks. They call them primary dealers that make their billions on all these transactions. They're the middlemen of that process. But that's basically how it works. I mean, it's a very simplistic overview of how it works.
So basically, the way that it works is that there's these Treasury auctions. And, there's less and less buyers for these. So what the Fed does is they actually bid the rates down instead of having them go up. And that's essentially what yield control is.
That's exactly right. And the specifically yield curve control is they don't want the long dated interest rates to go up. Because, most interest rates around the world are pegged to like the 10 years, a benchmark. That's a long dated interest rate. And of course, there's less and less demand. We've seen, you can check, it's called the TIC, the Treasury Inflation. It's called TIC data. I can't remember what TIC stands for, but you can tell who's buying and selling these treasuries. And demand has been dropping from China, from Saudi Arabia. This has been a trend that's going on for a few years. So there's less and less demand for these treasuries, which means that the Fed is going to have to step in even more.
So a lot of people have been talking about that for a long time, right? Eventually foreign people are going to stop buying this. And I did see in the last couple of days, I think Lawrence posted it, and it was showing, it wasn't incredible, but it was a very steady decline in the foreign investment into the U.S. debt. Do you anticipate that picking up in any significant way? I mean, obviously it is significant. It's a legitimate drop over a period of time. But do you anticipate a full exit out of this, or do you think that it's too political for that to occur?
Man, it's really hard to say, but I'm sure there's a lot of posturing and maneuvering going on behind the scenes on the world stage. And, we've seen this before where it'll start to trend off and then all of a sudden they step back in as buyers. I'm specifically foreigners like China, Saudi Arabia, European nations. But that ties into the petrodollar system, which that petrodollar agreement that was brokered by Henry Kissinger in, I think, 1974, basically the deal is they sell their oil in dollars and we protect them with our military, and they take those proceeds and reinvest them into treasuries. So that's the agreement. So
I didn't know it had the second part. So the second part of that is Saudi takes the proceeds and then dumps it back into U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, they call it petrodollar recycling.
Huh.
And that is probably the single biggest dynamic to watch. I mean, if that were to end, if that process were to shift, if Saudi Arabia and namely OPEC were to shift its focus, they're being courted by China and Russia. That would be the single biggest impact to the world reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar.
Why would they do that? Why, you talked about this last time too. Why would they do that?
Well, the United States has enjoyed this privilege since 1944. So we're coming up on 80 years, and of course, China and Russia want that privilege. It's very sought after. So I can't speak to the specifics, but it just common sense would dictate that they of course they would want their oil sold in their currency, in Chinese yuan or some other currency that they come up with.
How long do you think we can go until we start to see very noticeable inflation? We've got debt to GDP at insane levels. You talked about the money and the printing and Janet Yellen saying, like, she said the actual words, we need to quote, go big. Like she sounded like a surfer or something. Right. So how much longer do you think that this can last? Right. We've got Jim Rickards has been on the show and he said he thinks it's going to be deflation. Whereas I've had other individuals on and they say, well, look at the price of soybeans, look at the price of corn, look at the price of gas, look at the price of this. Where do you fall in that camp, and what are your expectations for when we see this more in your average consumer's daily life?
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for the views of Jim Rickards. I think we're going to see inflation. I think we're already seeing it. You just have to know where to look. You can't look at the CPI and the PCE and these government statistics because they're lies. I mean, they're just flat out lies. If you use generally accepted accounting principles like John Williams does at Shadow Stats, I don't know the exact number, but he calculates 8 or 9% inflation. And that's calculating it the way the government used to do it. It's not some fringe crazy way of calculating it. But if you just look at real estate, look at stocks, look at bonds, that's where the money is going right now. The newly created currency units are going into financial assets because the rich get it first, the wealthy get it first, and that's where they put their money. So eventually that's going to cycle through to consumer price inflation, the supermarket, filling up the gas tank, all those kind of things.
I was reading an article by it was about, not by, the head commodity researcher for Goldman Sachs, and he said they're starting to refer to corn as Bitcoin. Because it's going so astronomical. So let me ask you now, so we've got this macro climate, and your idea of this reset is essentially that this can't infinitely go on because the current people are going to lose trust in the currency. And so you believe at a certain point, either for better or worse, they will institute some form of a new monetary system, and you believe this is the process of the currency reset. Just to summarize, is that accurate?
That's a great summary, yes.
All right, good deal. So let me ask you now, let's talk about the ways to prepare. So for everyone listening, of course, just want to reiterate, Steve is probably and I mean this in all seriousness. I have an online business and I've been online for over 10 years. I think he's got the best email list or newsletter I've ever seen. And I say that in all seriousness and sincerity. And I'm talking about his free one is like better than like paid ones, and I'm being serious. So the link is right there down below for everyone to sign up for that for free. At least do his free version. It's like 19 pennies for his paid one, but his free one is really good. And so links in the description. But let me ask you a question I've never asked you. You have a different view than most people, so I know you're not saying this is what everyone should do, but what is your allocation of your net worth to gold and silver, if you're interested in sharing that? And I guess I mean that in totality between bullion and mining stocks.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't mind being fully transparent. Now, just because I'm doing something does not mean I recommend it for everyone else. I mean,
right.
This gut-wrenching volatility doesn't bother me at all. I have a confidence in where this is ending. I've been through this before. And your average person should not do what I do, especially someone who's older, retired, so not advice or anything. But, if you count everything that I have, I'd say 75%.
Steve,
because I also, I track other commodities as well. And so I don't suggest everyone go do all that. That high of a percentage, yeah.
Yeah. So you and I are in the same camp. So let me ask you then on what's happening right now. You said that this gut-wrenching volatility doesn't bother you, even though you have 75% allocation, more or less, and so you're experiencing with a large volume of your net worth. Why does it not bother you?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, when I zoom out and look at, so I'm primarily, my specialty is macro fundamentals and then technicals, technical analysis. So when I zoom out and look at these long-term charts, like for example, a long-term 10-year chart of gold, I mean, it's bullish. You cannot make a bearish case looking at that chart. The technicals are bullish. Now, even if it fell another $100, $200, I don't expect that. I really don't. But that wouldn't even change the technical picture. And you combine that with the bullish fundamentals. I mean, the fundamentals I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they've never been so bullish. I mean, you want to create it. If you want, a year ago, you said, hey, paint a picture of the most bullish possible environment for silver and gold. You probably wouldn't come up with something that's as bullish as we have right now.
Tell me some of those reasons why.
Well, debt monetization, currency creation, lockdowns, all of these things, the Fed is going to have to print more money in 2021 than they did in 2020. In 2022, they're going to have to print more money than they did in 2021 until there's some kind of reset or a new system. That just has to happen. And for 6,000 years, silver and gold have been the primary beneficiaries of this exact environment. I mean, there's new names for it now. There's new mechanisms. But, you can even go back to Rome. They were doing the same thing. They debased their currency. They tried to give free stuff to appease the people. They called it bread and circuses back in the day. These cycles just repeat. And 6,000 years of history suggests silver and gold will do just fine in this environment, regardless of, every tick up and down in the short term. And then the second reason why I kind of welcome this volatility, you mentioned the newsletter. It's really growing. And I have seen the news for a while now. I've been planning to do something like this. And I've seen the newsletter industry as ripe for disruption, is a term I like to use. And the idea is just to bring tons of value for free, give your best stuff away for free, and then people will see the value and then they'll upgrade to a lower ticket premium service if they choose. But all that to say, we've got so many new members coming in, and this gives them an opportunity to enter at more favorable prices. And part of the mission is to get everyday hardworking people to see these things and to be positioned to prosper. So if gold and silver just ran away right now, yeah, that would benefit us. And I wouldn't argue with that. I'd be happy for that. But I also like seeing more people get in the boat. It's going to help more people. So that's another reason that I'm grateful, and these pullbacks don't bother me.
I have to agree with that. And it's something I'm thinking about. Sometimes I get a comment and someone says like, hey, I'm brand new to this. Am I too late? Mm-hmm. What's your response to that?
Yeah, you're certainly not too late. And even if it moves up, to significantly from here, I don't think you'll be too late. but obviously earlier is better.
I mean, a lot of these stocks are like it's insane. I mean, some of them are at August levels, September levels. I mean, the fact, to me, when I look at the price of the $1,800 gold, it literally feels like a mirage, because I'm like, if you can zoom out enough and see everything that's happening right now on a macroeconomic picture, I mean, it's insane. It's a gift. If you are interested in this stuff, then I believe it's a gift right now. And that's what you're essentially saying for the viewer that's part of your newsletter that, maybe they didn't get there in time. You're saying, this is great for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've got strategies to scale in when things are running and perhaps they're a little bit overbought. There's strategies that we can employ to get in, but this is great for them, for people who are new, these kind of pullbacks.
So what do you think when you say that where gold and silver are headed? What do you think the future of gold and silver will look like in this kind of bizarre dystopian currency devaluation world?
Yeah, I mean, just having some fun speculating, I think gold will probably play a role in the global monetary system. So I don't necessarily see, like typically in previous bull markets, the metals will go up and they'll spike and then they'll kind of crash back down. I'm not sure we'll see that in gold. We probably will in silver, which is fine by me. Because I don't plan to hold all of these mining stocks forever. I think it's going to go into a bubble phase. And I think silver will probably pull back, and have a really sharp, crash, for lack of a better word, at the end of the bull market. Now, we're a long ways from that, so I don't want to give the wrong idea here, but I think gold will probably play a role in the global monetary system. I don't necessarily see them returning to a full-up gold standard per se. They don't want that. I mean, that would be an absolute last resort for them, because it implies constraint and discipline that they don't want to have discipline and constraint imposed upon them.
So what percentage of will you sell your bullion too? If so, what percentage, when you're running scenarios in your head, do you anticipate selling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to keep all of it, but I do plan to keep some that I plan to give to my children, and then for them to give it to their children and so on. It's just a lifelong insurance policy to keep some, but I'm not going to keep all of it. There will be a time to sell and trade the silver and gold for undervalued assets like real estate, or maybe even general equities. Who knows?
Got it. So when you invest in mining stocks and you invest in bullion, if your intention is to also trade out a majority of your bullion and gold, why do you, what is your philosophical reasons for owning both of those? Some people say, you own 100% bullion, whereas I've interviewed very successful individuals. They don't own an ounce of physical, and they have huge positions, but they only own mining stock because they say, look, it just creates so much more leverage. What is your philosophical reason for both of them?
Yeah, I think it's akin to I call it building your moat before your castle. The physical is insurance. That's your defense, and the mining stocks are your offense. And I always say build your defense first, build your moat first, because where this is all headed, I mean, who knows what this is going to look like? I don't like to go to the extreme examples that we're going to be going down to the grocery store trading silver for food. I mean, but it is possible. I don't think
that'll happen, but yeah, it is possible.
It's certainly an outside possibility, or some kind of scenario like that. And EMP, I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that can happen. And in that case, you'll want physical metal. A banking holiday, I think that's very likely to happen. They close the banks down for a couple of weeks, and you can go down and wait in line at the ATM and get $100 from the ATM per day or something like that. In that kind of scenario, I want some physical metal.
Yeah, instead of trading I think at that point of buying your bread at a store with silver, I think it's more likely that you've been locked into your house with some type of an esoteric force field that doesn't allow you to leave. And like an animal, they just scoop your food underneath your front door and they drop it off. So, all right. Well, let me ask you, outside of silver and gold, what are the ways you are preparing yourself for these times?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people think, I'll just get silver and gold and boom, I've got my preparedness taken care of. That's a small part of it, or I shouldn't say small, but it's a part of it. But yeah, I think food, having some food storage just makes sense. We insure against all these crazy things, floods and fires and earthquakes. Well, do you have any insurance against the supply chains being broken for a short period of time or a longer period of time? Just things like that make a lot of sense. Having a source of energy,
Before you go to the source of energy and you move on, let's talk about this one.
Sure.
What is your personal amount of, if you divided it or if you set it in days or months, how much food do you have in the event of a situation like that?
So I don't want to sound like a crazy extreme.
Dude, I already sound like a crazy extreme person, so all my audience sounds mild.
Yeah, I go above and beyond what a lot of people would need. So, I like to have a lot, and I like to have enough to support not only myself, but, I want to be my friends and family and neighbors, people I don't know. I want to be the guy, instead of waiting in line down at the, government handout place, I want to be the one going to my neighbors with some provisions and help that they need. So I've got enough to help my friends and family and neighbors too.
Yeah, but you didn't answer. Do you have 6 months? Do you have 12 months?
I think you
just answered that shit like a politician, man.
I guess no. Yeah, I think a year is good.
Okay, and do you have freeze dried or what do you have?
So what we kind of do is we have a deep pantry. So my goal is to have 3 or 4 months of the stuff we eat anyway.
Okay.
Cereal or peanut butter or those kind of things. It's to me that's like a no brainer because the prices of that stuff is only going up. So it actually makes economic sense too. So we just rotate that 3 or 4 months of rotating a deep pantry. And then we go to the freeze dried stuff and some of that too. But that's for like extreme emergencies. Hopefully I never have to eat that stuff.
Yeah. I honestly think we will. I think they're going to do a grid shutdown eventually to steal the rest of everybody's money, but that's my crazy prediction. But now let's go on to your next one. You said something about like energy or something like that, but I cut you off because I wanted to finish that one.
Oh yeah, so I just think food, water. So water, I mean, okay. I have a Berkey water filter. You can take swamp water and run it through that thing and it'll come out clean. So Berkey water filter, there's other brands too, but I like Berkey. So a couple $100. We do it. We use it every day because who knows what's in the city water, So we use it for all our water, even now. So we got the Berkey, and then as far as electricity, we get these Goal Zero things. There may be better ones out there, but solar powered battery banks. You could plug a refrigerator in there. At least we keep our food cold. Just basic things like that.
So it's like a little panel that has an outlet that you can plug in whatever you need into it, basically, if you had a grid outage.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have the big one. They've got a big one. It's $3,000 or $4,000, but you could power half your house on it. That's
what's up. What I was thinking about doing when my kid gets older is getting one of those hamster wheels and just having her run on it to power my. So you've got that, and then let's talk about business, right, Steve? So you heard me talk about business all the time. I think it's even more important. Other than food, I think it's the most important thing, and I think that for a lot of reasons. Now, you recently started your business this year and with tremendous success. And so you've seen a lot of the things that maybe you heard me kind of randomly say happen in your life. So let's talk a little bit about what you've learned so far in your first year of business. There's a lot of people afraid to start a business for a lot of reasons, whether it's our own personal fears of failure, rejection, thinking it's too hard, thinking we're not smart enough, thinking the government's going to, somehow sabotage us. But tell me a little bit about starting your business and what's that been like.
Sure. So it goes back years. I've tried many different things to various different degrees of success, but this, I've really, this has really taken off. And I think the difference, probably the biggest thing I learned, and just being transparent in the beginning, it's easy to just want to make money, right? You just want to make money online so you can provide for your family and leave the rat race. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this time around for me, it's, really focusing on serving people. Like if you just serve them and provide tons of value to them and always make that paramount, good things happen, good things come around in return. So rather than think, how can I get people to give me money? Think, how can I serve more people? What talents and abilities do I have? Things that I'm passionate about. Where do your passions and abilities intersect? And how can you serve people with those? And just go start doing it. And then eventually, you'll be able to monetize that, and it'll be a win-win for everyone.
So right before we went live, I just published a video called "The Currency Reset is Here: 5 Ways to Prepare." I got a really funny thumbnail with Klaus Schwab in it.
Nice.
But the first thing that I said was starting a business, preferably something online, because I think it's really undervalued. You far exceeded your own expectations, and you're going to be leaving your other job. But what advice do you have to someone that has been thinking about building an additional source of income, starting a side business? Maybe they're unsure, or maybe they're a little afraid. Or maybe they don't like their job anymore and they hope they could be like you. What advice do you have to someone like that?
I think the two big picture steps would be identify that cross section of your talents and abilities. Where do those intersect? And you can refine that later, and then start publishing every day. Find a platform. Some people don't like Twitter or YouTube or whatever, but pick a platform. It could be a blog, whatever, and just start putting your thoughts out there. And eventually you'll find your voice. You'll find what resonates with people, and then, you'll learn how to serve them better. And then eventually you'll be able to probably monetize that by serving more people.
Yeah, I think what people don't really realize is the internet's not just for like someone that's interested in like gold or makeup. Like if I was a dentist, I would try to have the biggest dental, my channel would be like, the easy way to keep your teeth cleaned. I'm back with another 5-minute video. And like, that's what I would do, and I'd have some funny ones. I'd have clickbait ones. I'd find celebrities with nice teeth and I'd find like what they brush with. You could do it for anything. And I think that you found that, that once you take the internet seriously, it can be a big leverage. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. One of your guests, I think it was Mark Moss, said in business, find a way to provide more value to more people, right? And, it's hard to do that without the internet. I mean, if you're trying to do that with brick and mortar, there's nothing wrong with that. But trying to scale that, I mean, it's a big world out there. We have customers and members around the world. So the internet makes that possible. There's people out there who can benefit from the knowledge and information that you have, your skills.
So tell me about some of the philosophies that guide your business and investing and finance principles.
Yeah. So number one, like I said, being transparent, I didn't always think this way. To think, how can I make more money? But just trying to always put your members, the people you're serving first. So that's number one. And then number two, never compromise your principles. As you grow, there's going to be ways to perhaps make a little bit more money while sacrificing your principles. And, obviously don't do that. We're never going to do that. So those are two that come to mind.
Do you have a certain amount of money that you religiously save on a monthly basis as a percentile? Don't talk about specific numbers, but as a percentile, or do you adjust it on a monthly basis? I ask this because, I think these are the other things that are important that I think a lot of people miss. And, some people don't take me that seriously because they say, oh, you're 29 and you're young. But, I've done pretty damn well for myself. And gold is 1/10 of it. Business is one of them. And religiously saving is another one of them that I think is often really dismissed. So I was just curious how you approach that.
I don't have... So basically, we set a budget that's less than we make, and then we set a budget for the overflow, whatever's left. And, you can decide how much you want to give, how much you want to save for opportunities.
And do you and your wife do that together? Yeah,
we do.
And has that been good for your guys' relationship?
Yeah, it sure has. We try and do what we call a budget meeting every month, where you just get together. And it's not so much about money, but it's about pursuing our goals, and being intentional about what we want to do. Because if you're not careful, if you don't have a plan, you just end up spending everything, right? Amazon makes it really easy. Just keep hitting that buy button, and all of a sudden all your money's gone. So just being intentional about what you want to do with it. And I think about things, when I'm old and on my deathbed someday, I want to think about how I was a wise steward with the resources I was entrusted with.
So your budget meetings are your real everyday expenses, but also some longer term goals you have and how they size up on a monthly basis and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, I asked about your wife because that's something that really changed not only my financial life, but it changed Ashley and my relationship. Mm-hmm. We did it all together. We set our goal. We actually would put them on the fridge, and I like to visually gamify whatever my financial goals are. So whatever the number is, and then anytime, whether we save $10 or 10 zillion, we'd go and we'd write it in Sharpie, and we would like go together. We'd sit down when we would eat, and we'd say, here's where we're at with this. And it was really good. Just really good for our relationship. And it sounds like that's been beneficial for you as well.
It sure is. Yeah. And in the beginning, my wife is just super easygoing. You just go handle all that stuff. I trust you. So it's hard to get her to, it was hard in the beginning to get her to give her input, rather than just go along with whatever I say.
Interesting. Yeah. It takes a minute to get that camaraderie going. So what are the things that you're going to be watching for most this year?
So I talked about the interest rates, always watching the petrodollar system, keeping an eye on Saudi Arabia and how they're being potentially courted by Russia and China. But really, I guess the biggest thing is going to be, so from a purely financial perspective, and silver and gold and our mining stocks is going to be the policies of the Fed. I mean, the Fed is going to, how much money they print is probably going to be directly proportional to how well silver and gold do. And of course, they've already shown their hand. The currency creation and debt monetization is just going exponential.
When you say you're going to be watching interest rates, is there any chance they let them ride? I mean, or what's your thoughts on that when you say, because to me, I'm like, I'm just trying to understand that a little better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I by the way, last night I re-listened to your interview with Lynette Zhang, which was awesome. And thanks. She said something that was really interesting. And I've thought this before, but she really drove it home, is that perhaps, their goal isn't to kick the can down the road as long as possible. That's an outside possibility. Maybe they want it to end, or they want it to. So trying to interpret what their goals are, I don't know. But that's a possibility. But it's easy just to assume they want to kick the can as long as they possibly can. But maybe they don't. And one way to do that, end the game sooner, would be to let interest rates rise.
Yeah, that's interesting. But wouldn't that crush metals if they did that?
No, actually, gold and silver do well that would be massively deflationary. And silver and gold do well in deflationary environments too, just like in the Great Depression in the 30s. I think the best performing stock, if I remember right, in the Great Depression was homestead mining. Yeah,
it was homestake. Yeah.
Yeah. So initially, the knee-jerk reaction might be for them to go down, but over the long term, I mean, there would be, if the banking system is imploding, I mean, people are going to want gold and silver. So I think they'll do well regardless.
Yeah, that was an interesting point that she said. Perhaps they don't want to kick it down the road, and I've always been under the assumption that they want to kick it down the road as long as they can. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really interesting. I think one of the reasons that interview did so good is before her and I went live, we like pop on and just the way you and I talked before, and she goes, "You can ask me anything you want. Nothing's off limits." And I said, I was about to tell you, you can say anything you want and nothing's off limits. And so she's a really interesting lady. I like her a lot. So tell us some of the best books for someone that's saying, okay, I want to prepare as much as I can, whether it's finance, whether it's personal development, whether it's metals. Give us a couple must reads for us to be pursuing here in 2021 as we come to a conclusion here.
Okay, I'll mention three. So this would be for someone who's new to this world. They hear the word petrodollar system, they have no idea what you're talking about, or Federal Reserve and how debt monetization actually works. A really good high-level overview book is Bankruptcy of Our Nation by my friend Jerry Robinson. He is my mentor. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time. Bankruptcy of Our Nation by Jerry Robinson. Great high-level overview of everything. And he even talks about how to create multiple streams of income in there. So it's really everything. And then this might tie into one of your other questions. I'm no huge big Dave Ramsey fan, but a lot of the things I just mentioned were the legacy journey, it's called. And it gets you thinking about things like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? It's not about just getting rich, achieving financial independence, but why do you want to do that? And what kind of legacy do you want to leave with your wealth? And what kind of inheritance do you want to leave to your children? So that's a good one. As reluctant as I am to mention Dave Ramsey, because there's all kinds of connotations that come with that. I disagree with him on a lot of things. And then let's see, another one that's really shaped my life. And this one is probably not for everyone, but it's boring. It's a big, thick read. And it's I call it like the Bible of technical analysis, and it's Technical Analysis of the Financial Markets by John Murphy. And it's just a big textbook on on technical analysis. And I'd say that's one thing that really one of my mentors said, it changes your tax bracket. It can change your tax bracket, learning to read price and volume on a chart. Because those two things, there's more information density on a price and volume chart than in a 20-page report.
I think that's a good goal. That's a good goal for everyone and for all of us in 2021 is to move into a new tax bracket. And so let's end here. What is one outlandish or outlier prediction you have for the social or economic system over the next 5 years?
Wow.
Or 10.
Say the beginning part of that question again.
Okay, give me one, not like some stupid prediction that's like they're going to print more money this year. Yeah. But what's one outlier, outlandish, little bit not accepted by everyone prediction that you have for the social or economic world over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. I'm reluctant to go there because it's kind of dark. It's not like an uplifting thing, but it's an anomaly for us for wars to go this long without a big major war. And, with all the domestic things going on, that's where everyone's focus is on, especially here in the United States, on domestic issues. But there's so much tension brewing geopolitically, globally. So, I hate to say it, but, these when financial systems like this tend to end, it tends to coincide with major armed conflict. And unfortunately, that's something, again, that falls into my preparedness steps.
Bro, that's not even outlandish. I'm convinced that's happening within these 4 years of the Biden administration. I didn't want to upset too many people, but I wanted to do a Twitter poll and say, how many years until we start bombing the next country? 1, 2, or 3? Yeah. Because I'm convinced that it's happening. It's also a nice distraction from what's going on. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. If we did have some type of an armed conflict, is that going to be negative or positive for the metals?
I mean, historically, it's positive. But, one thing to be aware of, just in the past, whenever we see these little geopolitical tensions rise, the metals get a nice pop. But then as soon as those concerns ease back, they fall back. So really what's going to be the long-term driver is the economic aspects, the currency debasement.
And that's not changing.
Yeah, but wars are expensive. So whenever we go into war, it's another free pass for the Federal Reserve to monetize even more.
I guess more debt too then, huh? So we'll even have a worse GDP to debt ratio. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for everyone listening, please make sure you hit the like button on this side and this side right over there. Prepare yourself for what's coming down the pipeline. We're still 25% just from all-time highs here in silver. I think we have a lot of room to run in both gold and silver. I believe we're going to wake up, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and we're going to say, I can't believe I actually thought the price of gold was $1,800. There's at least 100 to 1. I don't know the exact numbers for how many contracts own each ounce of gold. Meaning there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the world that think they own gold, but there's hundreds of other people that think they own the same ounce. And to me, this is the real manipulation of the price. That's the way you really can keep the price down. And one day it's going to change. We didn't even talk about Basel III, which is that's coming in June. That could really send the price of gold soaring. So we'll do some research on that, and you and I can talk about that next time. But the point being is prepare yourself by joining Steve's free newsletter. It's in the description right there down below and pinned to the comments right there down below, where Steve will break down everything that's happening in the macro environment, the micro environment, in precious metals, in uranium. He even talks about actually what he's buying and selling, which can be a very daunting task because there's so many mining stocks. So make sure you sign up for free right there down below. Steve, Do you have any last words? Did I summarize that well?
No, you did a great job. Thanks, brother. Really appreciate you. Appreciate all the work you do. You bring such great guests on, and you're just a great asset to all of us, to our community. So thanks for keep doing what you're doing.
In the words of Klaus Schwab, the reset is coming soon.